Marcus Chun wiped the grease from his hands with a dirty rag, squinting at the alien machinery that had been giving him trouble for the past 3 hours. The massive cargo hauler stretched before him like a metal whale, its hull scarred from countless journeys between star systems. As the only human mechanic on Kepler Station, he'd grown used to working on ships designed by species with completely different ideas about engineering. The Zoltharian freighter's engine made a sound like a dying animal whenever the captain tried to engage the hyperdrive. Marcus had seen this problem before on ships that had been pushed too hard, too fast. The crystalline power cores that most alien species used were efficient, but they were also temperamental. One wrong move, and the whole thing could explode, taking half the station with it. He crawled deeper into the engine compartment, his headlamp cutting through the darkness. The air was thick with the smell of ozone and something that reminded him of burnt cinnamon. Zoltharian ships always smelled weird to humans, probably because their atmosphere preferences were different. Marcus had learned not to think too hard about what he was breathing on alien vessels. The power coupling was right where he expected it to be, nestled between two massive conduits that hummed with barely contained energy. He pulled out his multi-tool and began carefully disconnecting the primary feed. The Zoltharians had a habit of over-engineering everything, which meant what should have been a simple repair became an exercise in patience and careful wire management. As he worked, Marcus couldn't help but think about how he'd ended up here. 5 years ago, he'd been just another grease monkey in a Detroit auto shop, dreaming of something bigger. Then, first contact happened, and suddenly the galaxy was full of opportunities for someone who could fix things. It turned out that humans had a knack for mechanical work that impressed most alien species. Something about the way human brains were wired made them natural problem solvers when it came to complex machinery. The irony wasn't lost on him. Humanity had spent centuries thinking they were alone in the universe, and when they finally met their cosmic neighbors, it turned out their greatest contribution was being really good at hitting things with wrenches until they worked. A sharp pain shot through Marcus's nose, and he felt the familiar tickle that meant his sneeze was coming. He tried to hold it back, knowing that any sudden movement in the cramped engine space could be dangerous. The power coupling he was working on carried enough juice to fry him if he accidentally touched the wrong component. But the sneeze wouldn't be denied. It built up pressure behind his eyes, making them water. Marcus tried breathing through his mouth, tried thinking about something else, but his body had made its decision. The sneeze erupted from him with explosive force, echoing through the metal corridors of the ship like a small thunderclap. The sound seemed to go on forever, bouncing off bulkheads and reverberating through the deck plates. Marcus winced, hoping he hadn't disturbed any of the other workers on the station. The acoustics in the docking bay could make the smallest noise carry for hundreds of meters. He was about to get back to work when something strange happened. A low humming sound began to emanate from somewhere deep within the ship, but it wasn't coming from the engines. This was different, older somehow. The metal around him seemed to vibrate with a frequency that made his teeth ache. Marcus frowned and checked his instruments. All the power readings were normal. The engines were still offline, just as they should be. Whatever was making that sound, it wasn't part of the ship's regular systems. The humming grew louder, and now he could feel it in his bones. It was almost musical, like a chord being played on some massive instrument. The sound seemed to be coming from beneath the ship, from the direction of the station's lower levels where the old excavation sites were located. Kepler Station had been built around the ruins of an ancient alien structure, something that predated any of the known galactic civilizations. The archaeologists had been studying it for decades, but they'd never found anything more exciting than empty corridors and unintelligible symbols carved into stone walls. The prevailing theory was that it had been some kind of storage facility or way station for a long-dead race. But now something was definitely happening down there. The humming was joined by other sounds, mechanical clicks, and words that suggested machinery coming to life. Marcus could see dust falling from the ceiling of the engine compartment as whatever was happening below sent vibrations through the entire structure of the station. He quickly finished securing the power coupling and made his way out of the ship. The docking bay was in chaos, with alien workers chattering excitedly in a dozen different languages. The station's emergency lighting had activated, bathing everything in an eerie red glow. Captain Yurix, the Zeltharian who owned the freighter, scuttled over on his 6 legs, his antennae twitching with agitation. "Human Marcus," he said in his translator-assisted voice. "What have you done to my ship?" The entire station shakes. "It's not your ship, Captain," Marcus replied, looking around at the confused faces of the other beings in the bay. "Something's happening in the old ruins. Something big." Station Commander Thale's voice crackled over the intercom, her usual calm demeanor replaced by barely controlled panic. "All personnel, report to designated safety zones immediately. We are experiencing seismic activity in the lower levels. Repeat, all personnel to safety zones." Marcus ignored the order. His curiosity had always been stronger than his sense of self-preservation, and right now he needed to know what was causing the disturbance. He made his way to the nearest maintenance shaft and began climbing down toward the archaeological levels. The humming grew stronger as he descended, accompanied by flashes of light that seemed to come from deep within the station's core. The ancient corridors that had been dark and silent for millennia were now alive with energy. Symbols carved into the walls were beginning to glow with a soft blue radiance, pulsing in rhythm with the mysterious sounds. Other people had the same idea he did. Dr. Sarah Kellerman, the chief archaeologist, was already in the main excavation chamber when Marcus arrived, along with several of her team. They stood transfixed as the ancient machinery around them awakened from its eons-long slumber. The chamber was massive, carved from some kind of black stone that seemed to absorb light. In the center stood a raised platform surrounded by concentric circles of symbols that were now blazing with energy. Above the platform, holographic displays flickered to life, showing star charts and incomprehensible data streams. "How long has this been going on?" Marcus asked, approaching Dr. Kellerman. She turned to him with wide eyes, her usually neat hair disheveled from running through the corridors. "It started about 10 minutes ago," she said, "right after we heard that loud noise from the docking bay." "What happened up there?" "I sneezed," Marcus said, feeling foolish even as he said it. Dr. Kellerman stared at him for a moment, then laughed nervously. "You sneezed? That's what triggered all this." Before Marcus could answer, the holographic displays shifted, and suddenly they were looking at what appeared to be a 3-dimensional representation of human DNA. The genetic code rotated slowly in the air above them, each base pair clearly visible and labeled in symbols that somehow seemed familiar despite being completely alien. "That's impossible," whispered Dr. Vin, one of the xenobiologists on the team. "How could they have human genetic data? This facility is millions of years old." The DNA sequence began to pulse, and a new sound filled the chamber. It was a voice speaking in a language that predated human civilization, but somehow Marcus understood every word. "Recognition pattern confirmed," the voice said, echoing through the stone walls. "Genetic marker authenticated. The chosen bloodline has returned to claim their inheritance." The platform in the center of the chamber began to rise, revealing a hidden compartment beneath. Inside was what looked like a control interface, its surfaces covered with the same glowing symbols that decorated the walls. But there was something else, something that made Marcus's blood run cold. Carved into the stone above the interface was a perfect representation of a human hand, positioned as if someone had pressed their palm against the surface. The carving was ancient, older than human civilization, older than recorded history. But it was unmistakably human. "The air has returned," the voice continued, and now all the symbols in the chamber were pulsing in unison, creating a light show that was both beautiful and terrifying. "The covenant may be fulfilled. The Guardian protocols are now active." Dr. Kellerman grabbed Marcus's arm, her fingers digging into his sleeve. "Marcus, I think this is about you. I think this whole facility was waiting for a human to arrive." "That's crazy," Marcus protested, but Even as he said it, he could feel the truth of her words. The machinery around them was responding to his presence, growing brighter and more active the closer he got to the central platform. The acoustic signature has been recorded and verified, the voice announced. DNA sampling confirmed through expelled respiratory droplets. Identity authenticated, descendant of the first builders. Welcome home, child of Earth. Marcus felt his knees go weak. Descendant of the first builders? Child of Earth. None of this made any sense. Humans had only achieved spaceflight in the last few centuries. They were newcomers to the galactic community, barely more advanced than the primitive species that most aliens considered little better than animals. But the evidence was literally glowing all around him. Somehow, impossibly, this ancient alien facility had been built by humans. Or, at least, it had been built by someone who shared human DNA. The implications were staggering. Guardian protocols require immediate activation, the voice continued. Galactic threat assessment indicates critical danger level. The Devourers have begun their final harvest. The Heir must claim their birthright before the last light is extinguished. The holographic displays shifted again, showing what looked like a real-time map of the galaxy. But something was wrong with it. Large sections of the star map were going dark, entire systems winking out of existence as they watched. Whatever the Devourers were, they were systematically destroying everything in their path. And they were heading toward the core worlds, toward Earth. Time remaining until arrival at Sol System. The voice announced with mechanical precision. 47 standard galactic days. Recommend immediate activation of defensive protocols and mobilization of Guardian fleet assets. Marcus stared at the dying stars on the holographic map, his mind reeling with the implications. Somehow, his simple sneeze had awakened a facility that claimed humans were the descendants of some ancient galactic civilization. Now it was telling him that Earth itself was under threat from something called the Devourers, and he was apparently supposed to do something about it. Dr. Kellerman was frantically taking readings with her instruments, trying to record everything that was happening. Marcus, this is the discovery of the millennium. This changes everything we know about human history, about our place in the galaxy. But I'm just a mechanic, Marcus protested weakly. The voice seemed to hear him. Profession, irrelevant. Bloodline, authenticated. The tools of the first builders respond to genetic resonance, not acquired skills. Please approach the interface for full activation and briefing protocols. Marcus looked at the glowing handprint on the stone platform. Every instinct told him that touching it would change his life forever. But if what the voice was saying was true, if Earth really was in danger, did he have a choice? The other researchers were watching him with a mixture of awe and terror. Dr. Kellerman nodded encouragingly, but Marcus could see the fear in her eyes. Whatever happened next, none of them were prepared for it. The humming grew louder, more insistent, as if the facility was growing impatient. The holographic map continued to show stars going dark, the wave of destruction creeping steadily toward human space. 47 days. That wasn't much time to figure out how to save an entire species. Marcus took a deep breath and stepped toward the platform. The moment his foot touched the ancient stone, the symbols blazed brighter, and he could feel power flowing through the floor beneath him. Whatever he was about to unleash, there would be no going back. The voice spoke one final time as he reached toward the handprint, its words echoing through both the chamber and his mind. Welcome home, Guardian. Your people have need of you. The moment Marcus pressed his palm against the ancient handprint, the world exploded into light and sensation. Energy coursed through his body like liquid fire, and suddenly his mind was flooded with information that shouldn't exist. Star charts spanning millions of years, technical specifications for weapons that could crack planets, and the history of a galactic civilization that had ruled the stars when Earth was still a ball of molten rock. He saw it all in an instant that felt like a lifetime. The first builders, who looked remarkably human despite predating Earth's formation by eons. Their vast empire spanning thousands of worlds, their incredible technology that could reshape matter at the atomic level. And Then, the Devourers, a force of pure consumption that swept across the galaxy like a plague, destroying not just life, but the very fabric of space itself. The first builders had fought them, held them back for millennia with weapons and defenses that defied imagination. But in the end, they knew they couldn't win. So they did something unprecedented in galactic history. They seeded the universe with their own genetic pattern, creating new species on distant worlds that would carry their legacy forward. Humanity wasn't just another random species that had evolved on an isolated planet. They were the children of the galaxy's greatest civilization, designed to be the ultimate guardians against the returning darkness. Marcus gasped and staggered backward, his hand leaving the interface as the download completed. His head felt like it might explode from all the new information crammed into it, but somehow he understood it all. He knew how to operate weapons that could vaporize moons, how to navigate between dimensions, how to command fleets of ships that had been waiting in hidden bases for millions of years. Marcus! Dr. Kellerman rushed to his side as he swayed on his feet. Are you all right? Your eyes were glowing. He looked down at his hands, and, sure enough, faint traces of blue energy were still dancing across his skin. The transformation was just beginning. According to the information now flooding his consciousness, full activation would take time as his human DNA adapted to its true potential. He was becoming something more than human, something the first builders had designed their heirs to become when the time came. I'm fine, he said, though his voice sounded different somehow, carrying harmonics that hadn't been there before. But we need to get off this station. Now, the facility around them was changing, ancient machinery emerging from hidden compartments in the walls. The archaeological site that Dr. Kellerman's team had been studying for years was revealing itself to be something far more significant than anyone had imagined. This wasn't just a storage depot or way station. It was a command center, one of dozens scattered across the galaxy, each waiting for the day when humanity would need to reclaim their birthright. I'm picking up massive energy signatures from the lower levels, Dr. Venn reported, his instruments going crazy as he tried to catalog what was happening. Whatever this place really is, it's coming online fast. Marcus could feel it too, a thrumming power that made his bones vibrate. Somewhere far below them, systems that had been dormant since before Earth-Sun was born were awakening. Manufacturing facilities, weapons platforms, and most importantly, the ships. He knew exactly what was down there because the knowledge had been programmed into his genetic code millions of years ago. The Guardian Fleet. Thousands of vessels designed specifically to fight the Devourers, each one capable of taking on entire armadas of conventional ships. They had been waiting in dimensional storage, ready to emerge when their crews returned to claim them. And now that Marcus had activated the facility, they were beginning the long process of transitioning back to normal space. How long until the ships are ready? Dr. Kellerman asked, as if she could read his thoughts. Marcus closed his eyes and accessed the data streams flowing through the station's networks. The process was becoming more natural by the minute, as if he'd been born knowing how to interface with first builder technology. 6 hours for the first squadron, 18 for the main fleet. But we have a problem. He gestured toward the holographic display, which was still showing the advance of the Devourers toward human space. They know we're here. The activation sent out a beacon signal across subspace. Every Devourer ship in this sector will be heading our way within the next few hours. The implications hit everyone in the chamber simultaneously. They were sitting on the most important archaeological discovery in human history, but they were also about to become ground zero for a battle between forces that could reshape the galaxy. And Kepler Station, for all its advanced technology, was just a research facility. It had minimal defenses and no way to evacuate its thousands of inhabitants before the attack arrived. We need to contact the Galactic Council, Dr. Kellerman said, already reaching for her communicator. They need to know what we've discovered. No. Marcus's voice carried an authority that surprised everyone, including himself. The Council can't help us here. Most of their member species don't have the technology to fight the Devourers effectively, and some of them might try to claim this facility for themselves. It was true, and everyone in the chamber knew it. The Galactic Council was a loose alliance of species that had come together for mutual benefit, but it was also rife with politics and competing interests. If word got out, the humans were the inheritors of the most advanced technology in galactic history. There would be wars fought just to control that knowledge. Then what do we do? Dr. Venn asked, his voice tight with panic. We can't fight them alone. Marcus was already moving toward one of the newly revealed control stations, his hands seeming to know exactly which symbols to press despite never seeing them before. We don't fight them alone. We wake up the others. The display shifted, showing a network of similar facilities scattered across the galaxy. Each one had been placed near worlds where the first builders had seeded their genetic pattern. Earth was obvious, but there were others. A mining colony in the Centauri system where humans had been working for 50 years, a research station orbiting a neutron star where a small team of human scientists had been studying exotic matter, and dozens of other locations where humans had spread across the galaxy. Every facility can only be activated by someone carrying the right genetic markers, Marcus explained, his fingers dancing across controls that responded to his touch like they'd been waiting for him specifically. But once one facility comes online, it can remotely trigger the others if there's someone with the right DNA nearby. He was sending activation signals across the galaxy, each one targeted at a location where humans were present. The response was immediate and overwhelming. Across dozens of star systems, ancient facilities were awakening from their million-year slumber. Manufacturing centers began producing ships and weapons, defensive systems came online, and, most importantly, other humans began receiving the same genetic activation that Marcus had experienced. But it wasn't without cost. Each activation sent out the same beacon signal that had alerted the Devourers to their presence. Within minutes, Marcus could see enemy ships changing course throughout the galaxy, converging on every location where a facility had come online. They're not going to give us time to organize, he said, watching the tactical display with growing concern. They know what's happening, and they're moving to stop it before we can mount an effective defense. Commander Thale's voice crackled over the station's intercom, cutting through the tension in the chamber. All senior staff report to the command center immediately. We have multiple contacts approaching at high velocity, and they're not responding to our hail attempts. Marcus looked at the researchers around him. Dr. Kellerman had gone pale, while Dr. Venn was frantically trying to back up his data files. They were scientists, not warriors. None of them were prepared for what was coming. But Marcus was changing by the minute. He could feel new instincts awakening, combat protocols that had been dormant in his DNA for millions of years. The first builders had designed their heirs to be more than just inheritors of technology. They were meant to be the perfect warriors against an enemy that consumed everything in its path. You need to get everyone off the station, he told Dr. Kellerman. Take the research data and evacuate to the closest human colony. The ships down there will protect you once they're fully operational. What about you? She asked. Marcus was already moving toward another control interface, one that would give him direct access to the station's newly revealed defensive systems. Someone needs to buy time for the evacuation. And according to this, he gestured at the flowing data streams around them. I'm the only one qualified to operate the weapons systems. That was both true and terrifying. The knowledge flooding his consciousness included detailed instructions for using weapons that could shatter asteroids and defensive shields that could deflect the energy output of an entire star. But using them required a level of integration with the first builder technology that only someone with the proper genetic activation could achieve. The facility shuddered around them as the first enemy ships began long-range bombardment. Through the ancient stone walls, Marcus could feel the impacts of weapons designed to crack planetary crusts. But the facility held firm, protected by defensive systems that made the station's regular shields look like tissue paper. Devourer Scout Force confirmed, he announced, reading the tactical data flowing through his enhanced consciousness. 3 heavy cruisers and a dozen smaller ships. They're testing our defenses before the main force arrives. More impacts shook the station, but Now Marcus could see the defensive grid coming online. Weapon emplacements that had been hidden for millions of years emerged from concealed positions throughout the structure. The first builders hadn't just built research facilities. They'd built fortresses designed to withstand anything the Devourers could throw at them. "The evacuation is underway," Dr. Kellerman reported, monitoring the station's communication systems. "But it's going to take hours to get everyone off safely." Marcus nodded, his hands already working at the weapon's interface. The targeting system was more sophisticated than anything he'd ever imagined, capable of tracking thousands of individual threats simultaneously while calculating optimal firing solutions for weapons that operated outside conventional physics. The first return volley from the station was like watching a star being born. Beams of energy that existed in dimensions beyond normal space-time reached out and touched the Devourer's ships, and they simply ceased to exist. Not destroyed, not vaporized, but erased from reality as if they had never been there. The remaining enemy ships immediately changed tactics, spreading out and using hit and run attacks to probe the station's defensive capabilities. They were learning, adapting their strategy as they gathered intelligence about what they were facing. They know what this place is, Marcus realized, watching their movements on the tactical display. They fought first builder facilities before. They know our capabilities. That was when the real attack began. The space around Kepler Station filled with ships as the main Devourer force arrived. Hundreds of vessels, each one the size of a small moon, their hulls covered with weapons that could sterilize entire planets. This wasn't just an attack. It was an extermination force designed to ensure that the first builder legacy died here and now. Marcus felt a moment of pure terror as he realized the scope of what he was facing. Even with all his new knowledge and the ancient weapons at his disposal, the odds were overwhelming. The Devourers had spent millions of years perfecting their war machine, and they weren't going to be stopped by a single mechanic who'd only discovered his true heritage an hour ago. But then he felt something else, the presence of other awakened humans across the galaxy. The activation signals he'd sent out were working. On dozens of worlds, his fellow heirs were discovering their own Guardian facilities, awakening their own fleets. He wasn't alone in this fight. The first Guardian ship emerged from dimensional storage just as the Devourer fleet opened fire with everything they had. The ancient vessel was beautiful and terrible, its hull seeming to bend light around itself as it materialized in normal space. It was barely a quarter the size of the smallest Devourer ship, but when it fired its weapons, the results were devastating. Entire sections of the enemy fleet simply vanished, consumed by weapons that operated on principles that made conventional physics seem like a child's toy. But there were so many of them, and they adapted quickly to each new threat. More ships coming online, Marcus announced, feeling the network of Guardian fleets across the galaxy awakening one by one. But it's going to be close. The battle for Kepler Station had begun, and with it, the war that would determine the fate of not just humanity, but every living thing in the galaxy. The Devourers had returned to finish what they started millions of years ago. But this time, the children of the first builders were ready for them. The battle raged around Kepler Station for 18 hours straight, with waves of Devourer ships throwing themselves against the ancient defenses like moths against a flame. Marcus stood at the central control interface. His consciousness expanded across multiple dimensions as he coordinated defensive systems that operated on principles beyond normal physics. His body was changing too, adapting to handle the massive data flows required to command first builder technology. His eyes now glowed with a constant blue radiance, and energy patterns traced across his skin like living tattoos. But even with all the ancient weapons at his disposal, they were being pushed to their limits. The Devourers had learned from their previous encounters with Guardian facilities, developing new tactics and weapons specifically designed to counter first builder technology. For every enemy ship that vanished into dimensional void, two more seemed to take its place. Guardian Facility Omega 7 has gone dark, reported Lieutenant Sarah Martinez, one of the few humans who had managed to reach her assigned station before the activation began. She was coordinating communications across the network of awakening facilities, her own genetic modifications allowing her to interface directly with the quantum communication arrays. That's the third facility we've lost in the last hour. Marcus felt each loss like a physical blow. Every facility that fell meant fewer ships in the Guardian fleet, fewer humans awakening to their true potential. But worse than that, it meant the knowledge stored in those ancient databases was being lost forever. The Devourers didn't just destroy their enemies. They consumed everything, leaving nothing behind but empty space. "How many ships do we have operational across all facilities?" he asked, while simultaneously directing the station's primary weapon array against a cluster of enemy cruisers that were trying to break through the outer defensive perimeter. 237 Guardian vessels currently active, Martinez replied, her voice strained from the effort of processing information from dozens of different sources simultaneously. "But we're still bringing more online every hour. The problem is coordination. Most of the other activated humans are still adapting to their new capabilities. That was the critical weakness in their defense. The first builders had designed their legacy to activate in a crisis, but they had assumed there would be time for proper training and preparation. Instead, humans across the galaxy were being thrust into command of incredibly powerful ships and weapons with only genetic memory to guide them. Many were making mistakes that cost lives and resources they couldn't afford to lose. Marcus felt a presence touch his consciousness through the quantum network, another Guardian coming online somewhere in the Vega system. The connection was tentative at first, like someone learning to walk for the first time. Then, it strengthened as the new Guardian accessed their inherited knowledge and began taking control of their facility's defenses. "This is Guardian Prime Marcus to all active nodes." He broadcast across the network, using communication protocols that operated faster than light itself. Status report and tactical assessment. The responses flooded back instantly, creating a real-time picture of the battle across multiple star systems. The situation was both better and worse than Marcus had feared. The good news was that Guardian facilities were awakening faster than the Devourers could destroy them. The bad news was that the enemy was learning too, developing new countermeasures with each engagement. Guardian Node 17 reporting came a voice from the Tau Ceti system. "Commander Jennifer Walsh, former Starship engineer. We have 43 ships operational and have successfully evacuated all civilian populations from this system. But we're detecting something unusual in the enemy formation patterns." Walsh transmitted her tactical data directly into the network, and Marcus felt his blood run cold as he processed the information. The Devourers weren't just attacking randomly. They were moving in a coordinated pattern that suggested they were building towards something much larger than individual facility destruction. "They're hurting us," he realized, the tactical picture becoming clear as more data flowed in from across the galaxy. "Every attack, every ship movement, they're forcing our responses into predetermined patterns." The implications were terrifying. The Devourers had fought the first builders before and learned from every encounter. They knew that the Guardian protocols would activate multiple facilities simultaneously, and they had planned for exactly this scenario. They were using the initial attacks to map the entire Guardian network, identifying critical nodes and preparation routes for a coordinated strike that would cripple the human response before it could fully develop. "All Guardians, implement randomization protocols immediately," Marcus broadcast. "Do not respond predictably to enemy movements. They're studying our tactical patterns." But even as he sent the warning, Marcus could see it was too late. The Devourer fleet around Kepler Station suddenly pulled back, their ships retreating to what appeared to be a safe distance. Similar movements were being reported from Guardian facilities across the galaxy. The enemy was repositioning for something big. "Sir, I'm detecting massive energy buildups in the enemy capital ships," reported Dr. Venn, who had remained on the station to help coordinate the defense despite multiple evacuation orders. His archaeological expertise had proven invaluable in understanding the ancient systems, even if his hands shook every time the station shuddered under enemy fire. "Whatever they're preparing, It's drawing power from sources I can't identify. Marcus dove deeper into the sensor data, using his enhanced consciousness to analyze energy signatures that existed across multiple dimensional phases. What he found made his enhanced human mind reel with horror. The Devourers weren't just preparing weapons, they were preparing to feed. The enemy ships were massive living organisms as much as they were technology, and they sustained themselves by consuming not just matter, but the fundamental forces that held reality together. They had been starving during their long journey back to the galaxy's core, and now they were preparing to feast on the energy released when Guardian facilities were destroyed. "They're not trying to defeat us," Marcus announced to the network, his voice carrying the weight of terrible understanding. "They're farming us. Every facility they destroy feeds them, makes them stronger. The more we fight back conventionally, the more powerful they become." The revelation sent shockwaves through the Guardian network. Voices began chattering across the quantum communication channels as newly awakened humans tried to process the implications. If conventional warfare only made the Devourers stronger, how were they supposed to fight back? The answer came from the deepest levels of the genetic memory, knowledge so fundamental that it had been encoded into the very structure of human DNA. The first builders had faced this same realization millions of years ago, and they had developed a solution. But it required a level of coordination and sacrifice that even they had been reluctant to attempt. The Convergence Protocol, Marcus whispered, accessing data files that had been buried so deep in his genetic code that they only became available during moments of absolute crisis. Lieutenant Martinez turned to look at him, her own enhanced eyes reflecting the blue glow that seemed to surround all activated Guardians. "What's the Convergence Protocol?" Marcus closed his eyes and let the ancient knowledge flow through him. The protocol was elegant in its simplicity and terrifying in its implications. Instead of fighting the Devourers with conventional weapons that only fed their hunger, the Guardian Network would merge their consciousness into a single entity, combining their individual capabilities into something greater than the sum of its parts. But the process would fundamentally change everyone involved. They would retain their individual memories and personalities, but they would also become part of something larger, a collective intelligence capable of wielding power that transcended normal physical laws. It was the final evolution that the first builders had designed into their heirs, but it was irreversible. The protocol creates a telepathic network linking all active Guardians, Marcus explained, his voice heavy with the weight of the decision he was about to make. "We become a collective consciousness, sharing not just information, but our very thoughts and emotions. In exchange, we gain access to the full technological legacy of the first builders, including weapons and defenses that operate outside the dimensional framework the Devourers feed on." The silence that followed was profound. Across dozens of star systems, humans who had only learned of their true heritage hours earlier were being asked to give up their individual humanity to save not just their own species, but all life in the galaxy. "How many Guardians do we need for the protocol to work?" asked Commander Walsh from Tau Ceti. Marcus consulted the ancient data one more time. "Minimum threshold is 100 linked minds. We currently have 237 active Guardians. But once the protocol begins, there's no going back. We become something new, something that's never existed before." The debate that followed happened at the speed of thought across the quantum network. Some Guardians argued for continuing conventional resistance, hoping to find another way to fight the Devourers. Others pointed out that they were losing facilities faster than they could bring new ones online, and that the enemy's feeding pattern meant they were growing stronger with each victory. But in the end, it was Dr. Kellerman's voice that settled the debate. She had remained on Kepler Station despite the danger, documenting everything that happened for posterity. Her words carried the weight of someone who understood what they were choosing to preserve. "Marcus, you were right when you said this changed everything about human history," she transmitted across the network. "But it's not just about our past anymore. It's about whether we have a future at all. If this is what it takes to protect not just humanity, but every living species in the galaxy, then we have to try. One by one, Guardians across the galaxy began signaling their consent. Marcus felt each confirmation like a weight settling on his shoulders. He would be the Prime Guardian, the central node through which the collective consciousness would flow. The responsibility for coordinating the actions of hundreds of linked minds would fall to him. Convergence protocol authorized, he announced. All Guardians, prepare for neural link establishment. Remember, we're not losing our humanity. We're becoming more than human. The process began slowly, with individual Guardians opening their enhanced minds to the quantum communication network. Marcus felt each new connection like a candle being lit in a dark room. Thoughts, memories, and emotions began flowing between them, creating a web of shared consciousness that spanned the galaxy. At first, it was overwhelming. Marcus could feel Jennifer Walsh's determination as she coordinated the defense of Tau Ceti, along with her memories of growing up on a farm in Kansas before joining the Merchant Marine. He experienced Lieutenant Martinez's focused concentration as she managed communication protocols, mixed with her childhood dreams of exploring the stars. Hundreds of individual human experiences flooded through his consciousness, each one unique and precious. But then the connections began to stabilize, and something incredible happened. The collective consciousness didn't erase their individuality, it amplified it. Each Guardian retained their personal memories and characteristics, but they could also access the combined knowledge and capabilities of the entire network. What had taken Marcus hours to understand through genetic memory, new Guardians could comprehend in minutes through the shared link. And with that understanding came power. The Guardian fleet began moving with unprecedented coordination, individual ships working together as if controlled by a single mind, which, in a very real sense, they were. The Devourer's tactical advantage disappeared overnight as their opponents stopped making predictable human errors and started displaying the perfect coordination of a collective intelligence. But the real revelation came when the first Guardian ship engaged a Devourer vessel with the enhanced capabilities unlocked by the Convergence Protocol. Instead of conventional weapons that the enemy could feed upon, the Guardian ship deployed weapons that operated in dimensional phases the Devourers couldn't access. The enemy vessel didn't just die. It was erased from the timeline itself, as if it had never existed. The tide of battle had turned, but Marcus could already sense that the Devourers were adapting once again. They had faced collective intelligences before, and they would have countermeasures prepared. The real test was yet to come. The convergence changed everything in ways Marcus hadn't anticipated. Through the collective consciousness, he could feel the thoughts and emotions of every linked Guardian across the galaxy. Jennifer Walsh's tactical brilliance, Lieutenant Martinez's communication expertise, Dr. Chen's engineering insights from the Centauri facility, they all flowed together into a symphony of human experience that was both overwhelming and exhilarating. But more importantly, the protocol had unlocked access to the deepest archives of First Builder technology. Knowledge that had been too dangerous or complex for individual minds to comprehend was now available to their collective intelligence. And what they discovered in those archives changed their understanding of the war they were fighting. The Devourers weren't just another hostile alien species. They were something far worse. The immune system of the universe itself, activated when any civilization grew too powerful or advanced too quickly. They had destroyed the first builders not out of malice, but because their technology had begun to threaten the fundamental structure of reality itself. We're seeing the pattern now. Marcus shared through the network, his consciousness processing data from a dozen different Guardian facilities simultaneously. Every great galactic civilization that ever existed, the architects, the Eternal Empire, the Star Singers, they all reached a critical threshold of technological advancement. And when they did, the Devourers came. The implications were staggering. The universe had a built-in mechanism to prevent any single species from becoming too powerful, and humanity had just inherited technology that put them squarely in the Devourer's crosshairs. They weren't just fighting for Earth or even the galaxy. They were fighting against a cosmic force that had been maintaining balance for billions of years. But the first builders had learned something crucial in their final war against the Devourers, something they had encoded into the very genetics of their heir species. The key wasn't to fight the universe's immune system. It was to prove that they could be trusted with ultimate power. The test, whispered Dr. Sarah Kim from the Guardian facility in the Alpha Centauri system. Her consciousness had been quietly analyzing the deepest levels of the archive data while the rest of the collective focused on the battle. The Devourers aren't just trying to destroy us. They're testing us. Through the shared link, Marcus felt her understanding flow into the collective consciousness. The pattern was there in the historical data, hidden in the records of civilizations that had faced the Devourers and survived. Not by defeating them in battle, but by proving they deserved to inherit the mantle of galactic guardianship. The test had multiple components, each one designed to evaluate different aspects of a civilization's worthiness. Military capability was just the first stage. Could they defend themselves and others against extinction-level threats? The Guardian Network had proven they could pass that test, using the enhanced coordination of the Convergence Protocol to outfight enemy forces that should have been overwhelming. But the second stage was harder, demonstrating wisdom and restraint in the use of ultimate power. The first builder archives contained weapon designs that could crack stars, defensive technologies that could make entire solar systems invulnerable, and manufacturing systems that could convert matter into any desired form. The question was whether humanity would use these tools responsibly or become drunk on power like so many civilizations before them. "We have a problem," announced Commander Rodriguez from the Mars facility, her consciousness touching the collective with urgent alarm. "I'm detecting massive energy signatures emerging from the galactic core. Something big is coming online out there." Marcus redirected his attention to the sensor data flowing in from the innermost Guardian facilities. What he saw made his enhanced consciousness recoil in horror. At the center of the galaxy, where the supermassive black hole known as Sagittarius A** resided, something was awakening that dwarfed even the massive devourer fleets they had been fighting. "The Nexus," he breathed, accessing memories so ancient they predated the formation of Earth's solar system. "They're activating the Nexus." The collective consciousness trembled as the full implications became clear. The Nexus was the Devourer's ultimate weapon, a construct built around the galaxy's central black hole that could manipulate gravity and space-time on a galactic scale. If fully activated, it could collapse the entire spiral arm structure of the Milky Way, reducing billions of star systems to cosmic debris. But it was also the final component of the test. The first builder's archives contained detailed instructions for disabling the Nexus, but only if the heir civilization could prove they were worthy of such power. The process required not just technological capability, but a level of coordination and sacrifice that would demonstrate their commitment to protecting all life in the galaxy. "How long until the Nexus reaches full activation?" asked Dr. Patel from the Europa facility, her consciousness sharp with analytical precision. Marcus dove deep into the sensor data, correlating energy patterns with historical records from the first builder archives. 17 hours, he announced grimly. After that, the gravitational cascade becomes irreversible. The galaxy dies. 17 hours to prove that humanity deserved to inherit the legacy of the greatest civilization in galactic history. 17 hours to demonstrate that they could wield ultimate power without being corrupted by it. And 17 hours to save not just their own species, but every living thing in the Milky Way. The plan that emerged from the collective consciousness was audacious beyond belief. They would use the Guardian fleet to punch through to the galactic core, fighting past devourer forces that had been gathering strength for millions of years. But instead of trying to destroy the Nexus through force, they would attempt to reprogram it, turning the Devourer's ultimate weapon into a tool for galactic renewal and protection. It would require every Guardian facility working in perfect coordination, channeling power through dimensional conduits that existed outside normal space-time. More importantly, it would require them to make a choice that would define humanity's future role in the galaxy. The archives are clear about this. Marcus shared with the collective. If we succeed in reprogramming the Nexus, we become the galaxy's permanent guardians. Not rulers, but protectors. We'll have the power to prevent any future extinction-level events. But we'll also have the responsibility to ensure that power is never misused. And if we fail? Asked Lieutenant Martinez. The answer came from the deepest levels of the archive data, knowledge that had been sealed away until this moment. If we fail, the test ends. The Devourers complete their cleansing cycle and withdraw to the void between galaxies. The surviving species get to start over, but they'll never advance beyond a certain technological threshold. The galaxy becomes a cosmic preserve, forever limited in its potential. The choice was stark: accept the responsibility of ultimate power and the eternal burden it carried, or allow the galaxy to be reduced to a controlled reservation where no species would ever again reach for the stars. For a collective consciousness composed of humans who had grown up dreaming of exploration and discovery, wasn't really a choice at all. Guardian Network confirmed for Nexus Assault. Marcus announced, all facilities prepare for dimensional translocation. We're going to Galactic Core. The process of moving an entire fleet through dimensional space was unlike anything humanity had ever attempted. It required the combined willpower of hundreds of linked minds, each one contributing their individual strength to maintain the complex equations that governed faster-than-light travel between galactic regions. Marcus felt the strain almost immediately. Even with the enhanced capabilities granted by the Convergence Protocol, channeling that much power through human consciousness pushed them to their absolute limits. Several Guardians collapsed from neural overload, their minds temporarily overwhelmed by forces that existed beyond normal human comprehension. But they held together, the collective consciousness adapting and compensating for individual weaknesses. And when they emerged from dimensional space near the galactic core, they found themselves facing a sight that defied description. The Nexus stretched across millions of kilometers, a construct of crystalline energy and twisted space-time that surrounded Sagittarius, a asterisk like a crown of stars. Devourer ships moved through its structure like antibodies in a cosmic bloodstream, their presence causing reality itself to ripple and distort. At its center, the supermassive black hole pulsed with unnatural rhythms, its event horizon flickering between dimensions as the Nexus prepared to unleash forces that would reshape the galaxy. "My God," whispered Dr. Kellerman, her voice barely audible through the communication link. She had remained on Kepler Station to coordinate the operation, her archaeological expertise crucial for understanding the ancient symbols and control mechanisms they would need to access. "How are we supposed to fight something like that?" "We don't fight it," Marcus replied, his consciousness expanding to encompass the full scope of their task. "We become it." The final phase of the test wasn't about defeating the Devourers or destroying the Nexus. It was about proving that humanity could integrate with cosmic forces beyond their current understanding, becoming something greater while retaining the essential qualities that made them human. The first builders had failed this test, ultimately choosing to preserve their individual consciousness rather than merge with the galactic force they had been meant to guide. But humanity had already taken the first step with the Convergence Protocol. They had learned to share consciousness while maintaining individual identity, creating something new in the process. Now they needed to take that evolution one step further, integrating not just with each other, but with the fundamental forces that govern galactic civilization itself. "All Guardians, prepare for final protocol activation," Marcus announced. "We're about to find out if humanity is ready to inherit the galaxy." The approach to the Nexus began as Devourer forces moved to intercept them. Massive ships emerging from the twisted space around the construct like dragons protecting their horde. But the Guardian fleet moved with perfect coordination, their attacks precisely targeted to disable rather than destroy. They were no longer fighting to win a war. They were proving their worthiness to transcend it. And As they drew closer to the heart of the galaxy, Marcus could feel something responding to their presence. The Nexus itself was awakening to the possibility of new caretakers, ancient systems recognizing the genetic patterns of the first builders' chosen heirs. The real test was about to begin. The final approach to the Nexus was like flying into the heart of creation itself. Space-time twisted around the massive construct, creating visual distortions that made navigation nearly impossible for conventional ships. But the Guardian fleet moved through the chaos with perfect precision, their pilots guided by collective consciousness that could process dimensional mathematics as easily as basic arithmetic. Marcus felt every maneuver through the shared link, experiencing the battle from dozens of perspectives simultaneously. Commander Walsh threading her squadron between reality tiers that could erase ships from existence. Dr. Patel using her facility's defensive systems to shield civilian evacuation ships from Devourer attacks. Lieutenant Martinez coordinating the complex dance of interdimensional warfare while maintaining communication with Guardian nodes across the galaxy. But most importantly, he felt their unity of purpose. These weren't just individual humans fighting for survival anymore. There was something new, something that bridged the gap between mortal consciousness and cosmic awareness. They had become what the first builders had always intended their heirs to be, a species capable of wielding ultimate power without being corrupted by it. The Devourers threw everything they had at the approaching Guardian fleet. Ships the size of asteroids emerged from dimensional storage, their hulls covered with weapons that could vaporize planets. Gravity wells designed to crush matter into neutron soup were deployed in complex patterns that should have torn the Guardian vessels apart. But the test had evolved beyond simple warfare. Each Devourer attack was met not with equal force, but with precise countermeasures that demonstrated understanding rather than hatred. When enemy ships tried to drain power from Guardian vessels, the humans redirected that energy into healing systems that repaired damage to both fleets. When gravitational weapons threatened to crush them, they used the enhanced mass to generate protective fields that shielded nearby civilian ships. Their learning, observed Dr. Kim through the collective link, her consciousness analyzing the changing patterns in Devourer behavior. Each time we respond with protection instead of destruction, they reduce the intensity of their attacks. Marcus felt it too. The cosmic immune system was beginning to recognize that humanity might represent evolution rather than infection. The Devourers weren't mindless destroyers. They were intelligent agents of universal balance. And they were starting to understand that the Guardian Collective might actually fulfill their intended purpose. But the real test wasn't the battle in space. It was waiting at the heart of the Nexus itself, where the ancient control systems that governed galactic civilization lay dormant. The first builders' archives had been clear about this. Accessing the Nexus required not just technological capability, but a level of consciousness that transcended individual existence. Guardian Prime were detecting response patterns from the Nexus core, reported Commander Rodriguez from her position leading the advanced squadron. Something's communicating with us. Marcus opened his enhanced consciousness to the signals flowing from the massive construct ahead of them. What he found wasn't communication in any conventional sense, but rather a direct interface with the fundamental forces that govern cosmic evolution. The Nexus was testing their worthiness on levels that went beyond mere technology or warfare. It wanted to know if humanity could think in terms of geological time, planning, and acting for the benefit of species that wouldn't evolve for millions of years. It needed to understand if they could maintain their essential humanity while wielding power that could reshape reality itself. Most importantly, it was evaluating whether they could resist the temptation to become gods rather than guardians. The answers came from the collective consciousness, flowing through the linked minds of hundreds of humans who had made the choice to evolve beyond their individual limitations. They showed the Nexus their shared memories of Earth, their commitment to protecting not just their own species, but all life in the galaxy. They demonstrated their willingness to sacrifice personal power for collective responsibility. And slowly, incredibly, the Nexus began to respond. Ancient systems that had been dormant for millions of years started coming online, recognizing the genetic and psychological patterns they had been programmed to await. The first builder's final gift to their heirs was revealing itself. Not just advanced technology, but integration with the cosmic forces that governed galactic civilization. Guardian Fleet, prepare for Nexus integration. Marcus announced across the network. We're about to become something the galaxy has never seen before. The process was unlike anything they had experienced during the Convergence Protocol. Instead of linking with other human minds, they were connecting directly with systems that operated on scales beyond normal comprehension. Marcus felt his consciousness expand to encompass star systems, his awareness touching the quantum fluctuations that govern the birth and death of worlds. Through the collective link, every Guardian experienced the same transformation. They could suddenly perceive the galaxy as a living entity with civilizations serving as neurons in a vast cosmic brain. They understood the delicate balance required to maintain life across billions of star systems and the terrible responsibility that came with having the power to influence that balance. But most importantly, they retained their humanity. The collective consciousness that emerged from the Nexus integration wasn't a cold, calculating superintelligence. It was something uniquely human, compassionate, curious, and committed to protecting the weak while nurturing the growth of all life in the galaxy. The Devourers felt the change immediately. Across the battlefield, the massive enemy ships began powering down their weapons, their movements shifting from aggressive to almost reverent. The cosmic immune system was recognizing that the infection it had been designed to purge had instead evolved into exactly what the galaxy needed. The test is complete, announced a voice that seemed to come from the Nexus itself. But Marcus realized it was actually the collective consciousness of the Guardian Network speaking through systems that span the galactic core. The heirs of the first builders have proven their worthiness to inherit the mantle of galactic guardianship. What followed was a transformation that reshaped not just humanity, but the entire structure of galactic civilization. The Guardian Network became the central nervous system of a cosmic entity dedicated to protecting and nurturing life throughout the Milky Way. Individual humans retained their personal identities and relationships, but they were also part of something infinitely larger. Dr. Kellerman, monitoring everything from Kepler's station, watched in awe as the Nexus transformed from a weapon of destruction into a tool of creation. Energy patterns that had been building toward galactic annihilation were redirected into systems that would protect vulnerable civilizations and guide the evolution of new species toward their full potential. Marcus, she transmitted to the collective consciousness that now included the man who had started this entire adventure with a simple sneeze. What happens now? The answer came not just from Marcus, but from the integrated awareness of hundreds of Guardian minds linked with cosmic forces beyond individual understanding. Now we do what the first builders always intended, the collective replied. We become the gardeners of the galaxy, protecting and nurturing all life while ensuring that no single species ever again faces extinction from forces beyond their control. Across the galaxy, the effects of the transformation were immediate and profound. Devourer ships that had been attacking Guardian facilities suddenly became allies, their destructive capabilities repurposed for cosmic engineering projects that would benefit all life. Star systems that had been scheduled for cleansing were instead targeted for enhancement. Their worlds prepared to support new forms of life that would contribute to the galaxy's growing consciousness. But perhaps most importantly, humanity itself was changed. The individual humans who had undergone the Guardian transformation retained their personal memories and relationships, but they were also aware of their role in something infinitely larger. They were still Marcus the mechanic, Jennifer the engineer, Sarah the archaeologist, but they were also integral components of a galactic intelligence dedicated to protecting and nurturing all life. On Earth, the changes were felt immediately. The planet's magnetic field strengthened, protecting it from cosmic radiation that had been gradually eroding the atmosphere. Climate systems that had been destabilizing due to industrial pollution began to self-correct as Guardian technology subtly influenced weather patterns. Most humans remained unaware of the transformation, but they would benefit from it for millennia to come. Marcus found himself standing in the observation deck of what had once been Kepler Station, but was now a node in the Galactic Guardian network. Through the transparent aluminum windows, he could see ships from dozens of species working together on construction projects that spanned entire solar systems. The galaxy was being transformed into something unprecedented, a cosmic garden where every form of life would be protected and encouraged to reach its full potential. Dr. Kellerman approached him, her own eyes now carrying the faint blue glow that marked those who had been touched by Guardian consciousness. She had chosen to undergo partial integration, maintaining her individual identity while gaining access to the vast knowledge networks that now span the galaxy. "Any regrets?" she asked, gesturing toward the incredible vista of cosmic construction taking place outside the station. Marcus considered the question carefully. He was no longer just a human mechanic who had stumbled into an incredible destiny. He was part of a collective consciousness that bore responsibility for protecting billions of species across hundreds of thousands of star systems. The weight of that responsibility was overwhelming, but it was shared among minds that were infinitely stronger together than they had ever been individually. "None," he replied finally. "This is what we were meant to become. What humanity was always meant to become." And as he spoke, he felt the agreement of the entire Guardian network flowing through his consciousness. From the smallest maintenance worker to the most brilliant scientist, every human who had been touched by the transformation understood that they had found their true purpose. They were no longer just another species struggling to survive in an indifferent universe. They had become the galaxy's immune system, its gardeners, its protectors. The age of the Guardians had begun, and it would last until the stars themselves grew cold. But that was a responsibility they were ready to bear, because they were no longer bearing it alone. They were part of something greater than themselves, something that honored both their individual humanity and their collective potential. In the end, Marcus's sneeze hadn't just awakened an ancient tomb. It had awakened humanity's true destiny as the inheritors of galactic civilization, the gardeners of cosmic life, and the guardians of everything that had ever lived or ever would live among the stars. The galaxy was in good hands. Human hands, guided by human hearts, but empowered by consciousness that spanned the cosmic void itself. And for the first time in millions of years, every living thing in the Milky Way could rest assured that they would never face extinction alone. The heirs had truly returned, and they had proven worthy of their inheritance.